Have you ever wondered what happens the day she realizes she can't control you anymore? The day she feels it, not through your words, but through your silence. That subtle shift in your energy, the calm that no longer hides pain but radiates power. It's the moment her intuition whispers that something has changed, that the version of you she once could provoke, explain away, and manipulate is gone. And that realization shakes her to her core. Because control was never about what she said. It was about what you did in response. Every time you defended yourself, every time you tried to be understood, every time you argued for peace that never came, you unknowingly gave her energy. You gave her control. She fed on your reactions because they reassured her that she still mattered, that she still had influence, that she still had access to your emotions. But one day it stops. Not with anger, not with a fight, but with silence. Real silence. The kind that comes from understanding, not avoidance. The kind that doesn't seek to punish or prove anything. That's when the entire dynamic collapses. At first she'll be confused. She'll test the waters. She'll throw small hooks your way. Questions, memories, subtle provocations. All to see if she can still make you feel something. Because she's not testing your love. She's testing her control. And when those tests fail, when you respond with calm indifference instead of emotional urgency, that's when she truly begins to panic. She might call you distant. She might say you've changed. She might even accuse you of being cold. But deep down she knows it's not coldness, it's composure. It's not disinterest, it's discipline. You've finally learned the most powerful art a man can master, the art of stoic restraint. The ability to feel deeply but act deliberately. The strength to hold your peace even when provoked. You've realized that control was never hers to take. It was always yours to give away. And when you stop giving it, she stops having it. There's a moment, quiet but undeniable, when she sees it in your eyes. That stillness, that detachment that isn't born of hate but of evolution, the way your tone no longer trembles, the way your words are measured, the way your silence speaks louder than her chaos ever could. It unsettles her because the man she once knew, the man who reacted, who chased, who needed closure, has disappeared. In his place stands a man who doesn't explain, doesn't justify, doesn't need to be seen. He simply exists, rooted, grounded, aware. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's what you've become. The embodiment of calm in a world addicted to reaction. You've chosen control not through dominance, but through detachment. Your silence is no longer submission. It's sovereignty. And as she feels that energy shift, as she realizes her influence has dissolved into your peace, she begins to understand. She never lost you because you stopped caring. She lost you because you finally started caring about yourself. Control rarely announces itself as control. It disguises itself as connection, care, or concern. It sounds like love when it says, "I just want to talk," or "I just want to understand what happened." But beneath the softness lies the same motive. Power. Power over your thoughts, your reactions, your emotional rhythm. She never needed to hold you physically. She only needed to hold your attention. Once she learned how to trigger emotion in you, how to make you respond, defend, explain, she learned how to control the tempo of your mind. Every time you reacted, you confirmed her influence. Every time you explained yourself, you gave her another thread to pull. It didn't start as manipulation. It started as emotional conditioning. A few moments of silence when you didn't behave the way she wanted. A vague comment that left you questioning your worth. A delayed reply that made you anxious. You filled in the blanks she left open, creating stories, explanations, and apologies she never even asked for. That's how control works. It makes you fight your own mind while the other person simply watches. Epictetus once said, "When someone provokes you, remember that it is your opinion which provokes you." The truth is, she didn't control you through action. She controlled you through your interpretation of it. You weren't reacting to her behavior. You were reacting to what you believed it meant. And that belief kept you locked in a loop, chasing peace in the same place that destroyed it. You thought that by explaining, she'd finally understand. You thought that by proving your intentions, She'd finally stopped testing you. But what you didn't realize was that your reaction was her reassurance. The more you showed emotion, the more she knew she still had access to you. But something changed. The day you stopped needing her to see your side was the day you stepped into power. The moment you realized you don't owe anyone an explanation for your peace, you broke the chain. You began to observe her patterns without reacting to them. You saw her provocations not as personal, but as predictable. And instead of responding with frustration, you responded with stillness. Not because you didn't care, but because you finally understood. That's the turning point of Stoic discipline, when you realize that reaction is surrender. You start to see how your emotions were being used as levers against you. The late-night texts, the half-hearted apologies, the sudden silences. They were all part of a dance designed to test your self-control. But now you move differently. You don't dance when she sets the rhythm. You set your own. You don't react to provocation. You interpret it as data. You don't get cold. You get composed. The man who learns to master his emotions becomes the man who commands every interaction. Because when she can no longer predict your reaction, she can no longer control the dynamic. That's when everything begins to shift. The same uncertainty she once created in you now returns to her. She starts to feel it, the weight of her own silence, the emptiness of her own tactics. And in that moment, without a single word from you, the power she once held quietly slips away. The moment you stop reacting, everything changes. The balance shifts quietly, almost imperceptibly, but she feels it. There's no dramatic argument, no declaration, no goodbye, just silence, calm, and presence. That's when her confidence begins to crack. Because your silence no longer comes from hurt. It comes from understanding. It's not the silence of a wounded man. It's the silence of a man who's outgrown the game. And that silence carries more weight than any explanation ever could. She doesn't understand it at first. She'll still send messages that sound casual but are calculated. She'll post things that once would have made you question her loyalty. She'll try to stir the old emotion, to find the version of you that used to take the bait. But when you don't respond, when your tone stays calm and your energy stays grounded, she begins to feel something she's never felt before. Powerlessness. For the first time, she realizes she can't reach you through the same emotional triggers that once worked so easily. The man who once reacted to every word now moves with detachment. You've become unreadable, unshakable, unreachable. That's when she starts to replay everything. The arguments, the tears, the moments when she felt certain you'd never leave her orbit. She thought she understood your emotions, that she could predict your every move. But now nothing makes sense. Your silence confuses her. Your peace disarms her. The emotional leverage she once had disappears, and she begins to realize that control only ever existed in your reaction. It was never about dominance, it was about dependency. She needed your energy to validate her importance. When you gave her that energy, she felt powerful. Now that you withhold it, she feels invisible. Indifference has a gravity of its own. It's not loud or aggressive, it's quiet, steady, and suffocating. It forces her to sit with herself. The same silence she once used to punish you now punishes her. The same distance she once created to gain control now isolates her. Because what used to make you chase her now makes her question herself. She starts wondering why her tactics no longer work. She overthinks your calm. She suspects there's someone else. She invents reasons for your peace because she can't comprehend that it comes from within. And that's when the reversal begins. You no longer orbit around her mood. She begins to orbit around your stillness. You no longer live in reaction, she lives in uncertainty. Every time she tries to provoke you and fails, she loses another piece of her power. Every time she reaches out and you respond with simplicity instead of emotion, she feels her influence slip further away. The man who once explained, defended, and pleaded has been replaced by one who simply observes. You're not avoiding her. You're transcending her. That's the quiet revenge of the disciplined mind. You didn't destroy her ego. It's collapsing under its own weight. Egos thrive on reaction. They starve in stillness. And now your stillness is the mirror that shows her exactly what she lost. Not a man who obeyed, but a man who evolved. Not a man who needed control, but a man who mastered himself. Something happens when a man becomes truly unmoved, when his emotions no longer belong to the external world, but to his own command. That shift doesn't just change how he feels, it changes how he moves, how he speaks, how the world responds to him. The more you pull your energy inward, the more she begins to feel the difference. The same woman who once felt certain she could read you now finds herself lost in your calm. Because the feminine energy by nature seeks the stability of the masculine. And when that stability can no longer be shaken, it becomes magnetic. At first, she resists it. She'll tell herself she doesn't care, that she's over it, that you've changed. She'll mock your stillness as coldness. But that's only pride speaking, the last defense of an ego losing control. Deep down, she feels the gravity of your energy returning to you. The more disciplined you become, the more her curiosity grows. It's not about wanting you back. It's about wanting to understand what happened. How did you go from reactive to composed? From emotional to unshakable? From predictable to unreadable? That mystery becomes the quiet echo that follows her long after the conversation ends. And while she's trying to decode you, you've stopped trying to decode her. You've stopped searching for meaning in her silence, stopped chasing validation in her attention. Your focus has shifted inward, to your discipline, your peace, your purpose. You've replaced her emotional chaos with clarity, and that clarity radiates from you in ways you don't even notice. The tone of your voice, the steadiness of your gaze, the patience in your actions, all of it speaks louder than words ever could. You no longer need to say you've changed. Your presence says it for you. That's the power of Stoic discipline. You've detached from the illusion of control, not by rejecting emotion, but by mastering it. You've learned that control isn't found in dominance, it's found in restraint. The ability to feel everything yet be moved by nothing unworthy of your peace. That's what separates the man who reacts from the man who leads. You don't suppress emotion, you command it. You don't ignore what you feel, you choose how to express it, and that choice changes everything. It's what draws her back, not always in body, but in energy. She begins to soften, not because she's weak, but because your calm disarms her defenses. Your silence forces her to confront her own noise. She begins to remember the version of you she once tried to shape, and realizes that the man standing before her is no longer shaped by anyone. You don't need her understanding, her approval, or her return. You've transcended attachment. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be like the rock against which the waves break, and it stands firm while the raging sea falls still around it." That's you now. The calm in the storm, the man whose silence is not retreat but rule. And when the feminine meets that kind of strength, strength without aggression, power without ego, something ancient stirs within her. Respect. She no longer seeks to control it. She begins to revere it. In the end, silence becomes more than a weapon. It becomes a way of life. Not the silence of withdrawal, but of control. You no longer stay quiet to avoid conflict. You stay quiet because not everything deserves the sound of your voice. You understand now that peace is not found in convincing others, but in mastering yourself. The man who once needed to explain his worth now moves through life without the need for validation. You've stopped seeking closure from her, from anyone, because you've learned that real closure is internal. It's the moment you stop needing to be understood and start being understood by your own actions. She feels it every time she crosses paths with you, whether in person, in memory, or in energy. The same silence that once made her confident now makes her restless. She used to think your absence meant defeat, but now she sees it for what it is: dominance. Your lack of reaction has become the loudest answer she'll ever receive. Because when a man truly moves on, he doesn't announce it. He simply stops being available for chaos. And that absence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. You've realized that walking away isn't about proving strength. It's about protecting it. You no longer engage in arguments that drain your energy. You no longer chase emotions that betray your discipline. You've turned your focus inward, feeding your mind, sharpening your purpose, strengthening your body, and aligning your spirit. You've become centered in a way that makes noise irrelevant. That's the essence of Stoic resilience. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being untouchable. You still feel, but you no longer fall. You still care, but you no longer cling. You've learned to love from distance, to understand without reacting, to observe without absorbing, and that shift changes everything. The world begins to treat you differently. People who once tested your patience now respect your boundaries. Situations that once consumed you now pass through you like wind through a mountain. You've stopped trying to control outcomes and started mastering responses. Because you've seen that control is an illusion. What truly matters is composure. You've become immune to manipulation because your peace can't be bought, provoked, or broken. You've become the embodiment of calm authority. For her, that's the hardest truth to face. Because she realizes too late that silence was never weakness. It was strength disguised as distance. You didn't stop speaking because you had nothing to say. You stopped speaking because you finally understood that words mean nothing to those who can't hear truth. Your silence became her mirror, reflecting back everything she tried to escape within herself. Now she feels what you once felt. The confusion, the longing, the weight of uncertainty. But you've outgrown the storm. You've entered a state where nothing external dictates your inner world. The past no longer owns you. The future no longer frightens you. You exist in quiet command of the present moment. That's where power lives. Not in noise, not in reaction, but in silence. Because silence is not the absence of power, it's the proof of it. When you can stay calm in chaos, silent in provocation, and grounded in emotion, you've mastered the rarest form of strength, self-mastery. And from that place, you don't just walk away, you rise.